In this video, we're going to learn how to create this moody cinematic color grading, starting with matching the two images together and then fixing the basic values of the image, then starting to put the coloring depending on the references we gathered, and finally putting the final grading and final touches. So without any further ado, let's dig into build. Hello guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Nour and this is Nour Art channel. Okay, simply, what is color grading? Let me explain it using this image. So color grading is basically giving specific image, specific mode and emotions using the psychology of color. You know, every color that we see can arouse specific emotion. For example, as shown at this image, the red color gives you excitement, love, energy, the orange confidence, success, whatever the meanings of the color. But what I want to say is that when you see specific color, it arouses specific emotions on you. So for example, here in this image, as you can see, we're giving different emotions with the same footage depending on coloring. So the first one is suspense, more bluish, orangey one. The second one is action. The third one is crime. You cannot notice the orange that is here in the first one. There is no oranges. There is only blue and cyanish ones. And here romantic colors. The shadows have a lot of red and teal in the highlights, and here we have bluish magenta in the drama. So how can I start color grading an image? Firstly, I always start with a reference. So I go to Pinterest and let's type color grading cinematic or something, and let's search for something that we want to make our image like. So after some search, I decided to go with this split complementary color grading, which is the orange and reddish tones in the skin tones and cyanish bluish tones in the background, something like this. So before we start, let me tell you what's the meaning of complementary colors. Complementary colors are colors that are in the opposite sides of the color wheel. So they are basically facing each other like this. So here we have this red and green are complementary, the orange and blue, but we have something, depending on the color theory, we have something that is called split complementary. This is Adobe Color. It helps me in making some cool color palette. Split complementary is something like complementary, but it is split like this. So this color combinations gives you good results. That's basically what this website tries to tell you. And that is exactly what I try to make in my design. So enough talking in theory and let's get into work. So the first step, we are going to match the colors and the lightness of the man to the background, okay? So let's start analyzing the image. As you can see, the image of this man is a little bit darker than the background, and it has some, greenish tint to it. So let's start and try to match them to the background. I will start with the adjustments, and let's create a curves adjustment layer, creating a clipping mask from here. And now let's make the highlights brighter like this. You can see something like this. Very good. Now the lightness is matched, and if you cannot judge it, you can always go and create a black and white adjustment layer, and using this you are extracting the colors and saturation out of the equation. So you can now judge it in a better way, as you can see, like this. Very cool. Let's delete it. This is just a check layer. Next, let's match the colors because we have some greenish tint into the skin. I guess some of you cannot see or notice what I'm saying, but you will get this skill by time, and by a lot of practicing. So let's create color balance layer and let's clip it. And in the midtones, let's add some red and some magenta, maybe some yellow. Very good. Let's see before, after. Very subtle change. I don't know if you can see. Let's zoom in to see before and after, before and after. Very, very nice. Now the two images are matched. So let's see, here is before and here is after. Before and after. Very nice. Quick pause. If you're interested in creating amazing visuals like this step by step, I have good news for you, because my premium course, The Ultimate Guide to Photo Manipulation, is now released, and you can find it in the link in the description. In this course, I have explained all these projects in details. We have explained everything from putting images together, correcting lightness values, correcting saturation, correcting colors, and we have talked about how to paint light and shadow, how to put atmosphere effect, and adding the last final grading and color effects. You will find also all the stock images used, the PSD files, and all the brushes used. And if you want to take your photo manipulation skills to the next level, the link is in the description, and let's get back to the video. Now let's create a new layer above everything, and let's press Alt-Control-Shift-E to blend the two images together or to merge them, and then right click convert to smart object. The reason why I merged these two images is that I want to go to create a camera raw filter and see the end result in both images at the same time, and then I can split them, and I'll show you how. So let's go to filter and camera raw filter. And I always like to start with the basic corrections. So here I'm trying to put the lightness mode that we want. So if we want to create like a bright, colorful image, you can stick with this brightness and then maybe tweak it a little bit. But in our image, we want to create some cinematic, moody, a little bit dimmed or dark grading. So let's go to basics and let's start. Firstly, I will decrease the exposure because it's very bright. So let's decrease the exposure like this. Maybe more, something like this. And let's leave the contrast. And let's go to highlights. Dim it a lot, something like this. Because as I have already told you, I want it to be like dark, dimmed, moody color grading. Okay. And we have lost some information in the shadows, so let's open it like this, and maybe we can open up the whites, something like this. Very nice. Now let's go to texture. I will decrease the texture because I want it somehow soft lighting, you know, and at the same time let's go and decrease clarity. Very nice. Let's see. And maybe we can reduce the vibrance. Oops. No. Let's go to saturation and reduce it a little bit. And I guess you know the difference between vibrance and saturation. Basically, vibrance is decreasing the saturations of the high parts. So here we have a high saturation of the red color. So it reduces it, but it doesn't reduce the whole saturation of the image. So let's see, here is before and here is after. Here is before, after. These are only the basic changes or adjustments. Maybe we can add some magenta touch and some yellow one, +1. Okay, see before, after. Very, very nice. So these are the basics. The next step, I will go to calibration. I like to go to calibration first before anything because I want to adjust the skin tones to give it more orangey tone. So I do this with blue primary. I reduce it like this. Very nice. And then maybe increase like this. Very cool. Let's see the orange primary. Nope. What about the greens? No, that's good. So the next step, I will go to the color mixer, and here I will start putting the color effects or the color mode that I wanted. So let's start by the reds. So basically I am shifting the hue of the reds here in this part to, let's say, more orangey one, not magenta, a little bit orangey one. And then what about the oranges? Maybe we can make it a little bit magenta, like this. What about the yellows? You can notice the yellows in the highlights and in these trees, okay? The highlights here. So let's see. Shift them towards greens. What about the greens? Shift them toward more cyanish, like this. And the aquas, you can notice them here in this area. So let's reduce it to more bluish one, and the blue to more magenta one, like this. You can notice it here in this part, as you can see. So let's make it more bluish. Very nice. Now let's go to saturation and let's see what can we do. We can make the reds a little bit saturated more. The oranges, maybe increase that saturation. What about the yellows? I'll increase the saturation as well. The greens, nope. Maybe reduce the saturation because I want everything in the background to be less contrasty, less saturated, to not grab attention to it. Okay, let's go to luminance and let's decrease the reds, but the oranges, decrease it. The yellows, maybe increase it as well. But I think we need to open up the oranges a little bit more and the yellows as well. So it's basically needs some eyeballing, a good monitor, of course, and a lot of back and forth until you are satisfied. Okay. So here the luminance is the brightness of specific color. Then that is what I'm trying to do right now. So yeah, let's see. Here's before coloring, here's after, before coloring and after. Very nice. Now let's go to color grading and let's add the colors that we want into the shadows, the highlights and the midtones. So as we decided before, we will create this look. So as you can see right now, the shadows has some cyanish bluish tones and the highlights has some maybe yellowish orangey colors, okay, as you can see here. So that's what exactly we will try to do. So we will go with the highlights at first, and let's add some orangey color with a little bit high saturation. Try not to exaggerate in this number, the saturation. Let's make it something 10 or 11, something there in this area, and then maybe make it bright. And the shadows, I will just add cyanish color like this, and I will reduce its saturation to something like 3 or something. Yeah, maybe darken it. And in the midtones, I will add my main color, which is this aqua or teal color, something like this. So let's see before, after, before, and after. Maybe we can make it dark. Okay, that's not bad. I think the saturation of the image is now, it needs to be adjusted. So let's get back to the saturation and let's make it 0. Very nice, that is better. Okay, so let's add some grain effects. This gives us more cinematic look. Something like this. But whenever you try to create a grain effect, you need to zoom in because we don't want to create a lot of or exaggerating this grains effect. And now let's see before everything and after, or after. Very nice. Maybe we can go to curves and we can create like a curve to increase the contrast, like this, a very gentle curve. And at the same time, let's increase the dynamic range. We don't want absolute bright parts or absolute dark parts. So I open up the shadows like this, and at the same time open up the highlights. And let's see. Okay, let's see for after. Our work in camera raw is done. So let's press OK. And then we can duplicate this filter or camera raw filter effect into both of the images, the man and the background. But firstly, let's put the adjustment layers and the man image into a smart object. Right click, convert to a smart object. And then we can press Alt and drag this effect smart filter into the man and then drag it into the background. So for now I have the effect into both the background and the man separately. Very nice. Now let's start working on the background. I will start by creating a selective color from here, and let's start by removing this orangey color from here. We need to make it darker and at the same time less contrasty or less saturated. So let's start by going to the reds and let's add cyans, and maybe we can make it darker like this. Add some greens maybe, and maybe some blues. Decreasing the yellows means that I am increasing the blues. Maybe decrease the magenta, which will increase also the greens. Very nice. Now let's go to the yellows. What I'm trying to do right now is to decrease the attention from this area because it has a lot of color and it takes your eye from the main element, which is this man. So let's go to yellows, maybe add some cyans to the yellows. But before anything, I like to darken it like this. And then let's add some maybe greens and maybe some blues as well. Very nice. Now let's go to the highlights and let's make it dark like this. And then let's add some cyans to it. As you can see, you can notice it here in these areas. Okay, so when I add cyans, these areas shifted in colors. Some cyans, maybe some greens, and some yellows or blue. Let's see. Maybe we can go and create a hue saturation layer and we can reduce the saturation of this part, or maybe change its color like this. Yeah, because I don't like how it looks. So let's make it something neutral like this. And let's dim it, decrease its brightness. Very nice. And now let's press Ctrl I to invert the mask of the hue saturation, and using the brush we can paint over this area. Very nice. Let's see for after. Also we can mask this part because I want to have this bright red visible. So using the brush we can mask this area like this. That's very nice. Now let's create a new layer and let's try to put some color, cyanish color into the background. I will do this by grabbing the color that I want. So let's grab this cyanish dark Netflixy color and let's change the blending mode of this layer into multiply, And using the low flow soft rounded brush, I will just paint over these areas like this, because I don't want the attention to go to these areas. And then I can mask it using the same soft rounded brush. So let's decrease the flow and let's mask it like this. Again, maybe we can decrease the opacity. Very nice. Now let's create the same effect as this into the man, because after doing this effect, you can notice that the man is kinda splitted or separated from the background. So we can create a new layer and create a clipping mask. The man changes the blending mode into multiply, and let's paint these areas like this, but don't paint over his face. Okay, something like this. Very nice. Maybe we can erase it from here, this top part, and erase it from this top part of the man. Okay, that's nice. Now let's put final effect above everything to match all the highlights and shadows with each other. Okay, so let's go to adjustments, and what I like to do is to create curves adjustment layer, and let's shift the colors of the midtones and the highlights. So here I will add some cyans into the highlights, decreasing the reds from the highlights, which will increase the cyans. And then we can balance it by adding some reddish tones into the shadows. A little touch, something like this. And then let's go to the blues. Maybe we can add some yellows into the highlights. And maybe into the green channel, we can add some magenta or something, a little touch of magenta, like 2 or something, into the shadows, and see. See, before, after, very tiny touch. Very nice. We can create like final vignetting effect using another adjustment layer, which is curves, by creating curves adjustment layer and decreasing the lightness like this, and then pressing Ctrl I to invert the mask, and using the soft rounded brush I can paint over the edges like this softly. I think we need to darken this area from the background, this part, so something like this, painting with this color in this multiply layer. I can dim it like this. Very nice. Now what I like to do next is to emphasize this red color, okay, to, you know, balance the image and to add interest. So I'll do this by creating a new layer, and using screen blending mode I will get this orangey, maybe reddish color, and using a very low flow with the soft rounded brush I will just give it subtle, very subtle touches like this. As you can see, zoom out. Looks nice. Maybe we can create some final bloom effect by creating a new layer and then pressing Alt Ctrl Shift E, and let's go to select color range, and let's select the highlights. Maybe we can increase the fuzziness like this. So I'm basically now trying to select these highlights parts, increase the fuzziness, something like this, and then press OK, and then press Ctrl C, Ctrl V. And then let's delete this layer. So what I've done basically is to select these highlights, okay, And the next step, I will convert this layer into smart object, and let's go to filter, blur, and Gaussian blur. I will blur it like this, maybe something like this, and then change its blending mode into screen. Screen, I think. Let's see. Is before and here is after, but this is too much, so let's go to Gaussian blur. That's the reason why I created like smart filter or smart object. So let's increase this. Something like this would be good. Let's see. Or after. Looks not bad. Maybe we can remove it from his face, so let's mask it using the soft rounded brush. I will mask this area. Let's see. Before, here is after. Maybe mask it from this part as well. Maybe we can duplicate it if we want, but this is too much actually. So let's leave it like this, or we can decrease the opacity. So yeah, here's the final results after some tweaks. Here is before and here is after. Alright guys, color grading needs some work actually. And this work is not on Photoshop itself, it's here in your eyes and in your mind. Because when you color grade, you need to see the final image in your head before executing the effects into Photoshop. So it needs a lot of practice, it needs a lot of going back and forth, a lot of eyeballing, a good monitor of course. So practice it daily, take your time, and don't forget to enjoy it while you're doing it. So if you like this episode, please hit the like button and leave me a positive comment, and I see you in the next tutorials. Peace.